Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniegolu. Now, what would it take to get the Nigerian government to declare a state of emergency in this country? Because while the ruling APC is busy launching its manifesto and most of the presidential candidates are going about their own business, the UN is warning that in the wake of the worst flooding in this country in a decade, 2.5 million people are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance, and 60% of them are children. So far, more than 600 people are dead. Many more are at risk of drowning or catching waterborne diseases. Nearly 1.5 million have been displaced, and property worth billions of naira has been destroyed. And this has affected 34 out of Nigeria's 36 states. So why is the Nigerian government insisting that things have not yet reached crisis point? Well, according to a coalition of leading NGOs working in the flooded areas, Nigeria is in the throes of a humanitarian crisis of global proportions, and it's time to immediately declare a state of emergency.
The state of the nation is in a dire need and a call for concern. With 31 states and the FCT affected by the flood, it is time for government at all levels, both at the federal, state, and local government levels, to explore sustainable ways to curb the perennial flooding that some states are increasingly experiencing during the rainy season.
Well, I can tell you that that number has gone up. It's no longer 31 states, it's 34 states. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Humanitarian and Resilience Manager at Action Aid Nigeria, David Habba. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And you've been traveling through the areas that have been affected by floods. What have you witnessed there?
I have witnessed devastation. We are having a crisis on our hand that is out of proportion. The situation is there. Even in communities that have prior been experiencing humanitarian emergencies, we cannot reach them with humanitarian assistance. The roads have been flooded, the bridges have been cut off, and communities are in their situation. So the crisis in the country right now, it calls for attention. And I think that the government needs to declare a state of emergency. The Minister of State has said that the situation is not as dire, and the states have not said that they are overwhelmed yet. But maybe he has not gone out. We have seen the situation. We have seen people suffering. Women are giving birth in the water. People do not have access to drinking water for days. Some people say, we need water, we don't care about blankets, just give us water to drink. The situation is there.
And where exactly have you been?
I have been to Yobe, I have been to Jigawa, I have been to Benue. These are states that are currently underwater. Communities, kilometers of landmass are currently underwater. Houses have been destroyed, people's properties have been destroyed, lives have been lost. The death rate, according to the statistics, we have over 600 people who have died as a result of the flood. And I think that it is unconscionable for anyone to say that there is no emergency on our hands.
Right. Well, let's explore that bit about the state of emergency that you're calling for and your coalition calling for. Because I'm sure you mentioned this, that you've heard the Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, saying that the federal government will not declare a state of emergency because it hasn't yet been overwhelmed by the situation. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's unconscionable to say that. I think the minister needs to go out to the field. He needs to go to the communities that have been flooded and to witness for himself. He may be receiving reports from his colleagues across the states, but I think that the situation is much more worse than what he says. And I do understand, because to an extent we are in a very critical time at the moment. The campaigns are on, and everyone needs to be careful. Everyone needs to watch what they say and how they say it, because it can come back and affect them. But we're saying that we have a country to save. We don't have a political party to save. We have lives to be protected and to be saved. And this is a right. People are not asking this out of a benevolence. This is a right. People need to be saved. And I think that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs needs to do more at all levels. The state governments need to do more. We are not hearing, for instance, the state houses of assembly reappropriating funds and saying that we are taking this money and putting in this place because there is now a greater need. Everybody is going on as if it's business as usual, and that is not right. That is not correct.
So do you think it would make a difference if things were led from the top? Because if you look, for example, I'm trying to get your assessment of the reaction, for instance, of President Buhari to this situation. Would you have liked to see him visiting those devastated areas, as we saw President Biden visiting places in Florida that were badly hit by the floods there? Would it make a difference in awakening all the agencies to the importance of this because it's coming from the top?
Certainly, it will make a difference. The body language or the impressions of what a leader says and how he goes about business has a lot of ways of getting people up. If the president was visiting the parastatals, the agencies, the state governments, the local government, we know that this is something that is at the front burner and they need to take action. But because the president has released statement and has put out tweets on Twitter, they may think that it's business as usual, and then he will get reports. He will not see firsthand what is happening across the country. He will not hear from the people. He can, of course, be cut off from the reality. We think that, I think and I do believe that if the president had, for instance, visited some of the communities, even the instructions that he has passed to his agencies and to his ministers and the people in his government, there will be a lot of difference. They will take it on with more seriousness because they know that he's the leader, either out of wanting to obligate and get and get into his good books, out of pretense or whatever. They will do it. They'll do the right thing.
Right. But what we need to be clear on, though, is what a state of emergency entails. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Because you guys are calling for a state of emergency, but we need to know what it entails. Because if the government say, well, we're doing everything that we can in the circumstances based on the resources that we have, and whether or not we declare a state of emergency, it's not going to make a significant difference. I'm trying to understand from the point of view of your coalition of NGOs that are calling for a state of emergency, what difference will that make, and what even is the constitutional provision for declaring a state of emergency?
In 2020, we had the COVID crisis. There was a lockdown. Funds came in from everywhere. We had a vaccine at record speed. That is what a state of emergency is.
And that was because of the way the government reacted.
Yes, right. Because I want to believe that because no one was immune. Everybody felt that, oh, I cannot fly out. If I can't go by road, I'll fly by private jet. COVID was everywhere. Now, a state of emergency would mean that the government will put this at top priority. It is not happening as such. Government business is going on as usual. The campaigns are happening. No one is talking about it. It's by the way. Oh, we're talking about we hear there's flood somewhere. We will talk about it afterwards. We will go and visit them after we've launched our presidential manifesto and we've inaugurated our campaign. We'll go and talk. We'll go and visit the people. We'll give donations to them. But it's more than that. The floods in Nigeria, we must recognize that have become an annual festival, just like the ASU strike. Every year we have it. Every year the floods come, people are killed, livelihoods are destroyed, and nothing happens. That's the sad thing. Nothing happens. And maybe people think that it will go like it has always gone. But we are saying that the government needs to stand up and act. And acting means that, just like I gave an example, yesterday at the press conference, one of the country directors said, every year we know that the floods will come. Every year we have the government appropriating budgets at all levels, at federal and state levels, for pilgrimage, for people to go and pray. How come we do not make such preparations for the floods? How come right now houses of assembly are on recess? What we should be having is House of Assembly calling their members back and saying that, okay, we had anticipated to spend X and X amount of money in this area. Now, because of the flood, we should bring this money and intervene and save lives. But that's not happening. And that's where we say that the government is treating this with kids' glove as business as usual.
So in effect, a state of emergency would, in your assessment, represent a full mobilization of all the resources in this country to try and address this.
Certainly.
So even if you don't call it a state of emergency, the actions that you carry out would give people the impression that you consider this to be an emergency.
Certainly. We've heard government say, using the government say, we've declared a state of emergency on electricity, we've declared a state of emergency on education. Most times this this state of emergency does not bring forth desired result. But we are saying that they should match these declarations with action. In this case, children are dying. Over 70% of the people who are displaced are women and children. As we speak, if a mother is pregnant, whether she's in the water, on the dry land, she would give birth if the time for the baby comes. Those are the people who need to be attended to. And it's not a privilege. It is a right.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely horrendous, I have to say, and I think the way that you're communicating it it conveys the urgency of the situation. But let's not forget that it is also the responsibility of all of us, Nigerians, to look out for other people. So, I mean, I imagine your call goes beyond the government, and you're talking to everybody who can help and mobilize support. We've seen the presidential candidate Peter Obi visiting the victims of the floods. Given that this is the campaign season when they need to show the Nigerian people that they care about them and not just their votes, would you want to see more presidential candidates going down there to be with the people in their suffering, or do you think that will look too much like a photo opportunity?
At this time, we need every Nigerian standing up for the Nigerians who are in distress. Presidential candidates, governorship candidates, wherever they are, whoever you are, if you have something to do to support a fellow Nigerian, then you're welcome. I do not want to go into whether this will be a photo op. As long as it will save a life, then you're welcome. And one thing I must be quick to say is the fact that these floods, as reoccurring as they are, this year the scale and the magnitude is different, is worse. We have never seen it at this level. It is important also to highlight that this is coming at a time when many Nigerians are facing insecurity. The banditry, the insecurity has made farmers unable to go to their farms and farm. And that means even without the floods, Nigeria was already on the brinks. With the floods, the lands that have been cultivated have been washed away. There's a crisis on our hands, and we need to wake up.
I want to thank you very much indeed, David Habba, not just for coming in, but for the work that you're doing there. And David is the Humanitarian and Resilience Manager at ActionAid Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.